Greetings! This is I, Pathinder of Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome, one and all. I hope you're having a wonderful day, whether you're joining me live right now over on Twitch or joining me later on YouTube. And for you guys joining me on YouTube, please remember to give those various support things, likes and ring the bell, all that kind of stuff that keeps the algorithms going for these things. Today, we're diving back into Pathfinder once more to Golarion, and we're talking about an ancestor, the Kashrishi. The Kashrishi are an interesting one because we do have a good chunk of information about them, but they really have only been in one single source. Yeah, we have one book that they're from 2022. They do add a lot, and there's a lot of questions about them and their history and things like that, but nonetheless, being a rare ancestry, we don't really consider it a worry too much. And I'll show off the book here that if you want to dive into the 5-6 pages of information based upon them, it's the Impossible Lands book. So that's our second edition book. That's where you're going to be diving into learning all about these dudes and dudettes. So they're a very interesting species. If you look at a Kashrishi, they kind of have the head of a rhinoceros. They are humanoids. Some of them have insectile features. The big thing about them is they have inherent psychic abilities. They're very empathic, and they always know the thoughts of those nearby to them. These things are a huge burden on them. If you look at them, they're small, they're quiet, they're kind of durable, kind of tough. A lot of times they'd be just described as being halfling-sized, and again, they do have this look of a combination of a rhino and bits of insectileness. And the crystalline horn on their heads is what kind of stands out pretty heavily. Their horn itself will glow each time they use any of their natural psychic abilities. Most of them have lightly colored skin of sandy or gray tones with coloration that might include those of their horn. And interestingly enough, they have the ability to rapidly evolve. It kind of connects up with their psychic abilities. Again, being an empathic impact, sometimes they're also, I'll talk about the evolution in a second, they are also sometimes thought to be like hive minds or something, but it's really just the psychic abilities and being able to read emotional states, understanding what they're reading, and reading each other very well, which kind of gets that misunderstanding from a lot. So yes, back to their evolution thing, which was an interesting thing to mention. They are capable of evolving new features over just one generation. Just one. So some will have an additional adaptive feature, something like a secondary pair of arms, to climb trees, and whatever this extra feature is, it's usually evolving around environmental obstacles, weather patterns, things like invasive food species that are threatening their food supplies, things like that. And these tailored evolutions kind of match a lot of creatures from their environments. So if there is if there's rhinoceros beetles in the area and you need an adaptation that a rhinoceros beetle uses, they're going to look more like a rhinoceros beetle. In other cases, if there's a giant water bug that's doing its thing and you need an adaptation like that, they're going to look like that. So whatever insects are in their environment, when they adapt bits that are kind of close to them. These adaptations typically manifest before they reach adulthood, though there is sometimes that some of them will unlock latent adaptive potential later on in their lives. So also keep that in mind. It isn't necessarily they're just going to jump out there right away with it. The crystalline horns do grow in variations too, and usually depends on their basically heritage. A lot of times, a good example would be the Xylosis, which have one big horn and a couple smaller horns around it. Again, the heritages will have slight differences this way. Alright. So, let's briefly talk about their history, because we really don't have a lot. This is the one thing that we don't have a lot of about the Kashrishi. We know where they're at, where you can find them. Jalremay and their surrounding islands. But their stories about how they got there was a dangerous journey over the Abari Ocean, fleeing a disaster in the distant past. What that disaster is, where they came from, is lost to time. But regardless, that disaster might have basically killed off the rest of their kin, and now they are the remaining members of their species, effectively. The exact details, again, heavily lost. It's just an unfortunate thing that we can't really look to that and know a lot about it. And maybe in the future we will get books that will introduce more of that history, but for now, that's what we have. So we look at the Kashrishi society. They, again, are focused around Jalremay, usually in larger communities closer to there, or smaller communities on the nation's main island. Very few of them travel beyond the Impossible Lands. That's why they tend to be very rare in anywhere else other than Jalremay. So if you're having a Jalremay game, hey, Kashrishi kind of could be logical to start there at very least, and maybe then you get an excuse to travel, but if you're anywhere else in Golarion, you're very, very little chance of seeing it. Because of their empathy, they kind of default to this honesty, kindness, good nature, I will say, that a lot of them have, respect for others. They do try to things like avoid deception or harming other people's feelings because they sense when they've done that. And they've built a civilization benefiting their own community. Teamwork is an important part about it. So they will actually engage in a lot of various games based around team. Games employing trivia as a measure of knowledge and psychic abilities, ones that use bluffs or double bluffs with blind cards, testing their abilities to basically check minds and organize thoughts and stuff like that. They don't really condone gambling with outsiders because of their psychic abilities. It's hard for them to just be like, I'm keeping my powers a secret, and reading your mind. So, They also don't have a clear concept of charity because of their empathic nature. Because the ideal of helping one another is kind of that natural state. It's the thing that they can sense when sensing the negative emotions and feeling it heavily means you want to keep everybody positive. So that's why, keeping that mental state of helping one another means helping keep each other in good state, so we don't feel bad because we all feel bad. And it's not because of a hive mind, it's because you read that, and then you feel that. So, acts of cruelty will actually spark community-wide emotional turmoil. The entire community will feel it. They're good diplomats, they're great hosts, but they have no tolerance for outside conflicts that comes to their territories. So, this often makes their small island communities actually hiverns for pirates or criminals seeking sanctuary from those that might hunt them down. When we talk about the relationships are monogamous, but they are gender agnostic. Gender isn't something they care about when it comes to relationships, because it's more about the psychic connection between them. They are monogamous, it's just who they find a significant connection with will be who they are intimate with. Because for them, the depths of intimacy is when they can fully open that psychic link with another of their own kind. And it's a complete holistic communication. There are those amongst their society that do believe this level of psychic communication should only be limited to intimate moments. It doesn't mean all of them believe that. But this deep links is very important to them. And that is, again, why, you don't really find they do have genders, but gender pairings doesn't really matter as much as that psychic. Who do I have this psychic connection with? Because we'll both feel it to each other. And that's who I'm going to be with. Now, they do tend to avoid eating meat, because when they consume a slain creature, they get that lingering psychic energy from it. So they don't do that a lot. So they eat a combination of fruits, vegetables, nuts, lentils, and combine flavors in such a way that is safe to their extrasensory tastes. So if they are dealing with other ancestries, many of them will find their cuisine very adventurously eccentric. And there are some Kashrishi chefs that take advantage of this and profit, because they're like, this is just what we make, but you guys love this stuff. Profit. Now, because they are psychic, each of them doesn't really have a spoken name in their society. They have a psychic signature, a mental fingerprint that each is unique to each of their own kind, that they recognize from each other. You're this mental fingerprint. But when they do travel with other ancestries, they will adopt a simple descriptive name, something like climber, warrior, mother, guardian, scout, tempest, just something that will represent them in that. Which does take us to those that do travel, those become adventurers. Because most of the time, if a Kashrishi does become an adventurer, it's not really a choice, it's necessity. You will see some of them, like the Lothosi, Troglosi of their heritages, branch out from their island communities to find new colonies or pursue adventures. Some might leave their communities because of overcrowding. These adventurers having psychic and occult abilities allow them to ward away enemies pretty easily and make friends easily, naturally, leading many of them to become things like bards, champions, psychics, diving into those depths of those abilities. Now we can talk a little about religion, because they aren't without religion necessarily, but there's this deep inherent connection with their communities that is very important to them over religion most of the time. There are some that do find worship of beings beyond their own importance of their community. Those that do find worship usually select a deity worshipped in Jalremay. Kashrishi Desnans actually worship her aspect of the crystal butterfly and pray to her when a Kashrishi child goes missing. There are some that actually focus on sea creatures and storms, they're on an island nation, and worship Besmara, though they actually do tend to ignore her pirate aspect of her pantheon into all the other things because of the sea creatures and ocean-based stuff. So, yeah. Because of their uncommon nature, you're probably going to be unrecognizable outside of Jalremay's area. Most don't really know of their existence. And if you run into one of the very rare Kashrishi that does travel, maybe in a big city, one of the larger places along the inner sea, they're often thought of as being some kind of experiment, exoplanar being, or something of the right. Now, and that evolution variety has resulted in a myriad of different distinctive types that share their same frames and physical strength. Most common are Xylosis, who have prominent neck muscles and the extra horns. Others, of course, are the Athamasi, Lethosi, Trogloshi, and Nascent are the other ones that you have. The Athamasi have extra limbs for climbing. Lethosi have adapted for coastline. Nascent are ones that haven't unlocked their potential but kind of can. That's, that kind of thing. The Troglosi are adapted more for jungles and deep caves. Yeah. So, that's the kind of just basic differences between the heritages. But yeah. There we go. There's the Kashrishi. We know an interesting bit of their society, and certainly the fact is they are I don't mean this in the literal sense, it is actually literal sense, they are small people, but they are a people with not a lot of numbers. They are small as in they are a very rare heritage. There are very few of them. They tend to be very good beings in general because of that. It doesn't mean you could not have a villainous Kashrishi, but honestly speaking, they're probably going to break away from their own community. Because they're going to be, again, they might have bad intentions, but don't want to have that feedback that they're creating amongst their kin, or they might feed on that and be kind of a little crazy. So it's not like you can't be any alignment. It's just if you are in a Kashrishi community, it's probably going to tend towards more lawful, pretty good if you're looking at old alignments things. It's going to be a generally speaking, ordered place where people treat you nicely. That's the normal community. And then anybody is going to end up with anybody depending on who you're psychically connected with. There's going to be all kinds of families, and plenty of them create children, have their people stand off. So, they survive, they adapt, they evolve, and they have this deep connection with each other in their community, which is important. That psychic abilities does mean they are vulnerable to stuff from the outside in a lot of ways. Vulnerable to negative thoughts, vulnerable to horrible things happening to them, and them all feeling it. When something bad happens, it ripples through their people. Because one person feels it, another person then goes, "Oh God, you're feeling so bad, it makes me kind of feel bad." And then it goes down the line. They're an interesting people. And yes, we may never see them very heavily outside Jalremay. Because there aren't a lot of them. Yeah, maybe they can try to set up colonies in various places, but it would take time, and then to find space and safety, and acceptance wherever they go, too. It's a question whether they can. But I think it's an interesting thing to see them, recognize them, and I would like to see some more of their backstory, but it's an interesting one that's a very simple, too. We fled a disaster and journeyed here over the ocean to find safety. That's their story. What that disaster was, when it occurred, lost to time. But it is a deep and interesting story. It tells a lot with just that little bit. But they're a strong people that survived something drastic. And they continue to be a strong people with closely knit communities that, if you ever visit them and you treat them nicely, honestly speaking, they'll treat you nicely and welcome you with open arms. But that'll be it for this video today. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Kashrishi. Remember to check out all my other stuff. The tabletop schedule is Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, early to afternoon over on Twitch. Everything goes up on YouTube. Crimson Queen, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. right now. It's my Pathfinder 1st Edition live play. I recommend that one. We're doing the adapted version of the Crimson Throne. Discussing tabletop Saturdays at 6. We talk about news of the week, deeper discussion topics, and stuff like that. And I do some other stuff over on Twitch. All the tabletop stuff goes over on YouTube. Keep that in mind, YouTube. You'll get all the tabletop things. You don't have to join me live. It'd be nice, but you don't have to. Anyway, I have social medias, Discord, Twitter.com, link below. And I think that's it. There's a little bit of shout-outs, some other stuff you can find for me. Anyway, we'll do more of these ancestries, more places, more Golarion-related things in the future. Until that next time, where I talk about something where you can learn more about all this stuff. I bid all you a deep and wonderful farewell.